Matt, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. How are things?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you letting me be here tonight.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's great to see you. It's great. How are you enjoying your fall break?
Well, yesterday was better than today, but it's cold and windy out there.
Yeah.
It's an abrupt change. So, but yeah, being home and relaxing, hanging out with the kids that you don't get to every now and again. They're all teenagers, so when they're cooped in, I get to
Yeah.
hear their voices more.
It's kind of
Oh,
nice, isn't it? I mean, when they're little, it can be exhausting, but then you look back and wish that you could just go back to those days because eventually it's hard to get them all in one place at one time and actually have to communicate with you.
or it's
What's
another
that?
nightmare and they don't ever shut up.
Oh.
But you miss it. I think you miss it. You miss that part. I think when you're going through it, it's a nightmare. But then you fast forward a few years when, they don't call or you don't ever have them in the same time, the same place. And you're like, are they not giving you grandkids to spoil?
Well, we don't need to talk about any of that tonight. Don't need to drag me through the mud. But anyways, Matt, how's the election feeling? How's it going for you?
Yeah, I think things are going well. We've had some good conversations, getting the word out there. Have some good interviews. I've been to some events where with my opponent, they've asked some good questions that have really shown the separation between the two of us. So I'm always appreciative of that. That's kind of the hard part with the primary is that the Republican candidates really agree on a lot of the same things, and with my opponents as well in the primary and in convention, we had a lot of the same things we wanted to do. It was just how we do them. That was the main difference, right? How do we work with people? How do we get things done? But here in the general election, you really see the differences, and you kind of see that in the general overall presidential election as well, right? I mean, when you hear these presidential debates on the Republican side, it's like, yeah, we know that you're different. You all have kind of similar ideas. You run a similar platform, but then when you have President Trump going against Kamala Harris, it's like just eye opening what the differences are. So anyway, similar thing, not of course not nearly the scale, but it's been nice to be able to again have those discussions where we say clearly Matt Hymas is different from his Democratic opponent.
Well, and we actually had your opponent on Friday last week, and she is an easy person to like. She's a lieutenant colonel, which is extraordinary, and a teacher. We really enjoyed the interview, him being a historian and all, and she was very, very kind. I have to say that if you're going to have an opponent, have someone that is kind, who's patriotic, who believes in the kids. She's a teacher like you are. And so I think that I appreciate the two people running. Both are parent, like you have to work with parents. You have to understand, what you've got to understand as far as curriculum goes, policy, the legislature, exactly what your jobs are. I appreciate that. And, I wish her all the best, of course. But I love that you are actually putting all your ideas into play. What you talk about is something that you actually input into the school that you are running. And as a parent of that school, I feel like my kids are benefiting a lot from the conservative values that you have put in there. I mean, when you see, do unto others or, something along those lines on the walls of your school, your Veterans Day assembly, the patriotism that you teach, love of country, love of each other, and then the individual spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the 7 habits, of highly successful people. That is all integrated into a school that you're the administrator of. And I think it's highly successful. And you do set yourself apart from other members of the board, which to me is awesome. I think Tooele County has benefited from your service. And I think that as the incumbent, I think that you've been a phenomenal representative.
Representation.
You've been a wonderful representative of the values that our county and even West Valley City and the other part of the district that you represent. I think that people are probably, now that we are in crunch time, I mean, we're a few weeks away. I think people are seeing the differences. And though you're both fantastic people, I think you're an excellent candidate, and I'm very excited, and I hope that we have a big win.
Yeah, so do I. And I appreciate the feedback and the compliment. My style, I worked in West Valley for 10 years trying to do the same thing, right? Lead by example. If I'm going to want to see it in a school, I'm going to want to see it in my school first. And so, and we found that with the school that I was in West Valley, the school that I am in now, that the people appreciate what's happening and they see it. And not everybody fits into the school where I'm at, but that's okay. And we can make things better for everybody, right? And so we can work at the state level, working with lawmakers, working with policy, and say how can we make this most beneficial for students? And that's what it's always been about for me. You've got some individuals who only want to hear or only are trying to help the system. And in my opinion, the best way to help the system is to empower the parents, give them a voice, because they want their students or their children educated. And that's how we're going to get things done, is by educating children and putting that above all. At my school, we don't have all of the programs that a typical district school would have. Yet we can educate and see better results because we're focusing on what we think matters, and that's academics. That's teaching them to read, to write, to problem solve through mathematics. Those things, I know I've said them before, but that's truly what we want for our kids, is to give them a chance. And when they come away as critical thinkers, and I'm not saying there's a direction on that, we don't try to pump out Republicans or Democrats or whatever, we try to pump out critical thinkers, kids who can gather information from everywhere and then make a decision on their own, similar to what the two of you have done. Nobody told you had to do this. This is a belief that you have, and this is a belief that I have. And I've been able to be taught by good educators in the public system and come out a critical thinker and be able to make choices on my own and not be influenced by the loudest voice or the strongest wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Be able to hear, gather information, and make good choices. And that's what we want for our kids as well. We don't want them to come away saying, well, Mr. So-and-so told me I should do this, so that's what I'm going to do. Right?
Yeah.
So
the biggest stark difference I've seen between the two of you, really, that shocked me, and I'm not going to use this as a pulpit, although I want to, is she has a tendency to stand up for and to praise the efforts of the federal government's efforts and lay all them on, say shine the patina on, say, the Department of Education and what have you on the way down. And you're like, and your voice is always empower the parents. And, I could rehash it again. I mean, the Department of Education, it came around in 79, and every year since then, the United States report card on public schools has gone down and down. We went from number 1 and now we're 28th, I think, this year. And in just about, we lose a point every 2 years. And I think that's a corruption from the federal government. You can't have an institution that's corrupt design a system, and what it produces is not going to be corrupt.
Yeah. Let me jump in here, Jared, because I learned an interesting statistic the other day. You're right about America. America's got its challenges, but let me tell you something about Utah. Utah just received the notification that it was the second highest in the country in
In what?
education.
Mm.
First in economy, you guys have heard that. But
Mhm.
second overall in education.
Who beat us?
I
Don't
don't
say
even know.
Texas.
That's a great question. Well, I'm going to have to do my research. But this, like I said, I just heard this information. In fact, it was yesterday morning, and so I'm sharing it here. And what that tells me, though, is despite the federal government, Utah has ethics, and they have principles that they stick to, and we've been fighting to keep our Utah principles and our everything that keeps us, our roots, our culture. We've been fighting to keep that, and despite the federal push, we've been able to do what we can to keep things out of our standards. We're still pushing for curriculum. There's some stuff that tried to slip in there. We did what we could to keep CRT out. I can't remember, like something explicit sexual something or other that the federal government was pushing. We did what we could to keep that out. You know what I mean? And we're still second. I'd love to see who is first, and I think we can overtake them. But we really do have a lot of people saying, this is Utah. We don't care what the federal government thinks. We're doing what we need to do, and our kids are in many areas coming out on top here. Now, I don't want to take away from the fact that you and I both know there's a lot of work to still be done, right? This isn't a time, in my opinion, to sit back and say, hey, we're number 2. That's great. I'm not even happy with number 1, because the ranking system to me doesn't matter. It's what we believe our kids need to come away with from public ed. That's what matters. If we fall into a high rank as a result, that's great, but that's not the goal, right? We're not trying to get a trophy from the federal government.
Well, I mean, look how far we've come, though. It's nice to be in the top 5, considering Utah in 2002 was number 1 in literacy. And then we took a big fall over those 20 years. And I don't know what their scale is to judge us on that number too, but it's nice to not be clear at the end. It's a lot of money's been spent in the name of education here in the state. And a lot of teachers have I mean, I think schools, teachers, especially engaged parents, administrators, they've done a lot of work for not a lot of pay. Yeah. And I think that that's an exceptional, I mean, we should be proud of that. I think that all administrators and all teachers in this state should be proud of that. And I think that's exceptionally
absolutely
nice to hear.
Yeah. We see, and this is part of the struggle I had, last year. There was a lot of rhetoric and behind just our teachers being bad and pushing certain things. And I'm telling people, like, hey, look, you are seeing maybe 1% of teachers doing this, if that.
Yeah.
You get one person doing this, and it blows up to, man, we got a huge problem here, right? And a lot of times it wasn't even in our state that it was happening, but it's scary. And like, I get what parents are doing. I'm the same, right? And I hear my kids, they come home from the high school, and I say, what's going on? What are you? And then I dig into it and meet with the teacher, right? Because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I learn a little bit more, and I talk to my kid, and they say, yeah, it's, you're right. That's what happened, but things get blown out of proportion a lot. And so we have to find that balance of saying, hey, we really do value and respect our educators. We've seen great teachers, and we have great teachers who are working so hard. And unfortunately, it only takes 1 or 2 to put a bad name on a big.
And that is the world, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have bad in every career. We have this conversation every time there's a law enforcement issue, every time you get a doctor that's done something, a priest, or a religious person. And yeah, it only takes 1 or 2. I mean, for example, the rhetoric over sexually explicit books in school, that was happening, but was it happening in Utah, for 1? And for 2, where did they come from? How did they get through the gates? And why are we running entire campaigns based on that, which is only making parents afraid, angry, and they're grabbing their torches, and teachers are collateral damage in all of this,
Yeah.
when half of them have never even heard of the book, let alone had it in their classrooms. So I think I mentioned last week that there's a couple jobs. The school board, I could see not being a partisan race or a sheriff. Schools and law shouldn't have to be partisan. But why I'm glad that they are is because those candidates will tell me where their values are, both budgetary and, personally, morally. I want to know who is representing me and where they stand on how they spend money and what standards that they want to accomplish and achieve and represent in their roles. So I hate that we're in a partisan situation, but I also appreciate the need for it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has its pros. And I think we're seeing that with my opponent happening right now. You kind of get a better feel for what you're voting for here, right? When you say, okay, we have a bipartisan election, let's talk to Matt on a Republican ticket, let's talk to his opponent on a Democratic ticket, right? You already have kind of an understanding, but then as you talk more, you get to see exactly if they really do fit that ticket that they're running on, and hopefully my values have represented the Republican well, and quite frankly, hopefully her values have represented the Democrat ticket well. But it does really give voters more transparency on who they're electing to put on the board to help their children succeed.
I agree. And Jordan Lott has made a comment. Education is important. In Connecticut, teachers get paid a ton in education in that state. It's not benefiting anyone. He said, hey, Matt, he should be the big boss. Let's go, Matt. And that's Jordan Lott. Thanks for tuning in, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan. And you know what, this comment on Connecticut, you see New York is another one. Ton of money into the education system, and they are not doing well. And what happened, somebody asked us about money, like why aren't we getting enough money, more money for education here in Utah? Now, I believe we are the largest portion of the budget, of the state's budget. There's no question in my mind that the legislature values education.
As does the governors, that we've had.
Yes, absolutely. But I was talking to an auditor in Alpine School District. He wasn't for the school district. He's just in the area. Anyway, he kind of brought something to my attention that I hadn't thought of before. And everybody, I'm sure everybody else has. I'm just a little bit slower on this. But he says in states like New York or Connecticut, their income is much larger and they have fewer children in the home.
Yep. Also, for every time that they come to us taxpayers to levy for education, under the guise of giving it to a teacher, they hire more district level administrators. That's where the money is flowing to. In every time that it's been audited, they took $10 more, $9.50 more went to administrative covers, and 50 cents went to the teachers. We built a progressive style administrative state, and we wonder why everything that's touched by the government ends up that way. That's what we've got to ditch. We've got to get the money directly to the teachers and cut back on the administrative costs.
It definitely has to reach down farther. Absolutely. I agree 100%. This is where my belief fits well with the charter model, because three-quarters of our budget go towards salaries and benefits, right? And so
that's amazing.
We do what we can, because I know that families come back because of their teachers. They don't come back for me. I'm not out there saying, hey, this school is great because of me. No, that's not true. The school is great because of my educators.
But don't they come back for the superintendent's third secretary to the
See, and
yeah.
between you and Mr. Marsden in the junior high, there is such an open door policy in the way you guys run your schools. The two schools are connected, and you are the administrator for both. But as a parent, there's never been a time that I couldn't go right in, make an appointment, and see either one of you, no matter what the situation was. And even then, same with teachers. And in charter schools, I think there's something to be said about teachers in a charter, because they don't have that public school. I don't know if they have unions or whatever in charters, but I have not had a teacher at either of the schools in Excelsior that I have not just appreciated and liked. And even if they didn't reach my kid in that way, because of course they have their favorites,
Right.
they have given something to my kids that it's special. It's neat. Their classrooms aren't huge. And I love that we have an incumbent that has worked in the charter school and who believes in the charter school method and has seen successes and can influence, hopefully, our state school board in a way to consider some of your successes that you found in that model.
I appreciate that. When charters first came out, from what I understand, they were essentially research and development schools to assist district schools on this is what's working and this is what's not. And but immediately when a charter opened, there was this rivalry, right? And so we're trying to get to the back to a place where we say, no, district schools and even charter schools, let's work on what works, right? Let's take what works and implement that. I don't know about you guys. I'm a product of public ed. I saw some good things in there, and quite frankly, I'm pro education. But where I landed in my career, I just love it to death. I love having the flexibility to focus on, in my opinion, what matters most. And again, that's academics. And there's educators out there who I've talked to in district schools who are saying, man, I wish I had that support, right? But you've seen our districts have grown so large.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you get a small school feel with a district the size of Tooele or Granite or Alpine, the three that I represent, which are all three quite large, Well,
they're bursting at the seams, and we find that we've talked about this before. They go in for their bond so they can build a new school that's already full to the seam by the time they open the doors.
Yeah.
And it's constantly doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And there's got to be a moment of clarity where the board says, what we're doing isn't working. Let's shift gears and let's tell legislature, this is what's working. This is what we see as success. This is how we avoid these $200+ billion, $1 million, whatever bonds that we have to see a production result. I mean, for Utah to be number one in economy and number two in education, that's phenomenal, because what that's telling the world and the nation is that not only can you prosper here as a business, but you can hire here.
Mm-hmm.
We've got employable members of society that have a good education who can stay here in Utah, and they can be your new employees. And ladies and gentlemen, that's huge, because they don't have to move people from, all over to be able to staff companies that want to come here.
Yeah.
And just a note for all you Utah legislatures out there, you want to throw us over the top on an economy that businesses and people want to move to and all that stuff. Ditch the taxes. I'll tell you what, as a worker, don't work overtime, because the state of Utah, they rob you blind. It is highway robbery when you work overtime.
Well, that's why you got to vote for Trump, because he doesn't want to tax overtime.
Yeah, I hope he can do it. Well, anyways, Matt, we got a half hour left with you. I just want you to spend a few minutes laying out. I want you to give your position, your spiel, if you will, on why people should vote for Matt.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to fill 30 minutes with that. I can answer questions all
Just
day.
talk real slow.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's understand your why. Why
Well,
run for the position?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. And the reason that I'm doing this is we have had so many over the years, so many policies that protect the system or the organization. And if we're looking at protecting or helping teachers or educators in that system, I'm all for it. Right? If we want to empower teachers and give them the ability to just do what they love, which is teach, I'm all for it. Because I believe that when we do that, we're also setting up a system where parents can be proud to put their kids in there. I get a lot of questions about this Utah fits all, the voucher law, right? The voucher law. And in my opinion, I say if the districts were doing and the schools, districts, charters were doing what they were supposed to do or what parents were happy with, then it wouldn't be a threat at all.
Right.
People would say, I don't want the money. I don't want to. It's hard to homeschool.
Yeah.
It's not convenient to put your kids in a private school. There's nothing convenient about that. The most convenient thing is to have your kid in their neighborhood school. But my personal experience, when my daughter came home in second grade back in 2000, I don't remember, late 2000s, early 2010s, and she said, I said, what'd you do today? We watched Monsters, Inc. And then the next day she says, we have a readathon. She's so excited. And then she describes how in her mind, I'm sure it wasn't all this, but she's like, they put us in the gym, shut the doors, and I didn't see an adult for 2 hours, And I'm thinking, what is happening? I'm trying to be patient. And then she comes again. We watched Finding Nemo today. And I said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. That's not an education. And then one of the straws on that stack was she, her teacher said, and I don't blame her teacher for this, but her teacher said, she's gifted and talented. She needs to be in the gifted and talented program. She is so smart. And both my wife and I said, that is great. That is so good to hear. When can we get her in there? Well, we don't have any room for her. Then why did you tell me about it? You know what I mean? You're telling me she's gifted and talented, needs to be in this upper class, and then tell me you don't have any room for it. All this kind of stuff just said, I got to get out of here. I've got to find a school. It's worth the drive to me to put her somewhere where she'll be educated.
I agree.
And so, and then, at my school, I remember when I came out to Excelsior, 10 years ago, there was one student who needed to be in an upper level class. And they said, Mr. Hymas, we don't have the class. And I said, then you make it. You're going to teach this kid where they are. And that's how important it is. And I feel like we need to recognize where kids are. Right now, we're teaching to the lowest, 20%, which.
So what you're saying is you need a sign out front that says, no child stuck behind.
Right. Yeah. Let them grow at their level. Don't hold them back. So like this math 7, math 8, I don't care if you're in math 7, or I don't care if you're in 7th grade. If you can do algebra, you need to be taking algebra. You don't take math 7 because you're in 7th grade. You take math 7 because you don't understand 7th grade math, right?
Or like in my case, you're in 7th grade and, a little bit of that 2nd grade math. I need to count teddy bears and apples is more my speed.
Did you guys, I don't know if you heard Tim Waltz talk about how proud he was that in his state that I think he said 35% of the students are diverse and they don't speak English. And I was like, you're proud of that? That sounds like a nightmare for teachers.
Sounds like a recipe for
how
problems.
On earth are the kids learning in a classroom where a teacher has, I'm all about diversity. I love it. I love it. But there should be a common denominator in a public school in the United States, and that's English, because a teacher cannot teach a classroom with 35% that don't understand them, or that's taking from the 65% that needs to learn, and they're getting held behind. And that is what I have loved about Excelsior. And I will tell this to anyone who listens: the fact that you guys do the RISE testing multiple times in the year, and the kid is adjusted, the classes fit what the kid's level's at. It's not, oh, we're going to skip a grade or we're going to put you up to a different grade. No. You can go to your math class, which is 2 grades above what you're in. And then you're going to come back to your reading class, which is at the same level you're in. But we're also going to throw in Spanish because you've already graduated from vocabulary and reading or whatever it is. And the kid doesn't know the difference. They're just going to class as normal, to a classroom that is the level that they understand. I think, why have our public schools not caught on that is a successful model?
Yeah. And at the same time, we really believe if you don't pass algebra, why would I send you to algebra 2?
Absolutely.
Right. And so we need some more accountability for these kids, and to say, no, if you can't read, then let's keep you in a reading class. You guys, I think I may have mentioned this on the show before, that kid who graduated high school, was in a different state, sued the state and the education system, saying, I graduated and I can't read. And it's, to me, that's obvious. Like, what do you mean you graduated? How is that even possible?
The number is astronomical. How many kids can't read at a
Last
regular
year,
level, let alone to graduate from high school at the standard?
wasn't it last year, Baltimore was like over 90% can't read at a graduation level that graduated?
Yeah, that's huge.
I think it was Baltimore, and that would be the vice president's state, or I mean the soon-to-be vice president in the Democrat ticket if he was to win. Isn't that where Tim Walz is from?
No, he's not. He's not from Maryland. He's from Wisconsin, I believe, or Michigan.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But to tout numbers like that, it's
But no,
really scary.
Baltimore is all these Democrat cities are failed cities. Baltimore, Detroit, they all leaned into this progressive policies that they're trying to force on the nation right now. And it absolutely destroyed their cities. And they try to blame it on all the other things, but no, it's their exact policies.
It's boys that are being affected tremendously in reading, math. And so it's boys who aren't going on to college. There's less boys enrolling in college. And then for the people who do, they're not staying in because they're not prepared.
And that makes it so that when the ladies outnumber the men going to college because the variables in what people look for, then there are people who can't pair match and start new families. Our demographics collapse. It's a whole thing. I personally, when Mad Max starts, I'm going to get me a Camaro and I'm going to paint it flat black and put a blower on it and carry a double barrel shotgun on my hip.
Matt, so tell us, what legislation would you say that is coming out this year? Is there any legislation that you're expecting in this next session that is focused on, because you mentioned the bill that basically, for those that may not know, is the bill that he was referring to is that the money follows the child. So if you decide as a homeschool parent to homeschool, then rather than your taxes going to your child going to a public school they don't attend, some of it gets back to them to spend. The parent gets to decide where that funding goes. Do you see legislation that you applaud, or have you worked with legislators on the upcoming session on anything that you could see being helpful?
So I haven't seen a whole lot yet. I know that they're working on it. The session starts in January, so things are coming. But let me tell you of the one that we have seen. Senator Fillmore, you probably may have heard. He did a press conference at Granger High School. He wants to write a bill, or he's in the process of writing a bill that bans cell phones. And he said, they say, what does that look like? And what he's essentially asking for is, currently, if a school wants to ban a cell phone, they have to write a policy against having it. For example, my school does not allow cell phones. We view them as a distraction, especially for kids in the K-8 realm. It's very difficult for a student within that age gap to stay focused on academics when you can have a cell phone in your hand, right?
Mhm.
But when you say ban, you mean the kid can have it in their backpack, but they cannot have it in the classroom.
So Granger has given out pouches. Have you seen those pouches?
Yeah.
Like when you go to a comedy show.
Yeah, Dave Chappelle gave those out.
Did he? Okay. Yeah. So they put them in the pouches, they lock, and then they have kind of a mechanism that unlocks it at the end of the day.
See, I'm torn on this because until we get the safety of our schools in a better place, I want to be able to hear from my child in the event of a bad nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
But I also understand that they are a horrible distraction and can be used as a tool that hurts kids rather than helps them.
Right. So, and that's the struggle that they're trying to find the balance with. So I asked my niece, actually goes to Granger High School. I said, "Do you use that pouch?" And she said, "No, absolutely not. But I keep it in my backpack and I don't take it out." So,
Or don't take it out while you get seen. I've got to bring up another notion. I hope legislatures
Wait, I don't
listen
know. Is
to
he
me.
done with this thought?
well, let me
Yeah.
jump onto what he's trying to do, Senator Fillmore. From what I understand, is he's trying to flip. So instead of the default being you can have cell phones, the default would be don't have your cell phones out in class, right?
Right.
And then if a school wants to write a policy saying actually we allow cell phones for example, theater classes, they use cell phones to do quite frankly research. They'll say get your phone out, get on YouTube and find something, right? And not all theater classes, but that's just an example. Some music classes, they might do research on it if a school doesn't have one-to-one computers. So anyway, what we're going to see with that is instead of the default being you can have phones, he wants to switch the narrative so the default is you cannot have your phones.
I think schools are notoriously behind the times because they teach what has been learned by someone who went out and did it. So by nature, they're behind the times. If schools want to make it so that cell phones aren't a problem for distraction, schools need to start using those cell phones.
Well, Jared,
What do you mean?
we've tried.
You figure out ways to, one, the calculator thing.
Mhm.
Pull out your cell phone, get on the calculator. They're not texting, but their cell phone's in their hand and they're the place that cell phone wants to be and where they want it.
But
But
then
the
the school
schools-
doesn't have power to
The
keep.
schools using that. Also, I think, and this is up to teachers. Teachers need to figure out a way to innovate if they're having problems with kids texting under the desk. Figure out how to bring that cell phone up and make it present. So a
Yeah.
teacher can maybe do research to say, hey, on your cell phone, type in this web address, and we're going to read along from your cell phone. The cell phone then is incorporated in the class and it's not a distraction. It's actually a part of it. Just
So
like
that-
when computers first came out,
Mhm.
schools were the same way with computers. They want, or even
Well,
calculators.
schools are issuing
They were,
computers
they
now.
were, I know. They were the same way. They're late to the ball game. Schools need to start saying, we've got to anticipate this. The cell phone is probably the single most transformative machine in human history. And
Right.
schools to try to take that away, that's ridiculous. That's what the Catholic Church did with the press.
The printing press.
Yeah.
Let me jump in on this because I hear you. And it was tried a few years ago. It said, hey, we have been pushing for technology in the hands of kids for years, and now they have the technology that we're the same technology that we've been pushing for, right? And then here come the studies, and this is where we're hearing things and learning things. And they say, what do the studies show? Well, they say the technology isn't a bad thing. This is to your point, Jared. The technology isn't a bad thing. Here's the problem, though, is I have a student and they have a cell phone and they have more apps and notifications than I could ever imagine on my cell phone. And they say it takes, there goes a notification for me, a sports update. Let me check it. No, I'm not going to check it, right? But what they say is it takes a youth, an adolescent, 20 minutes to refocus once they get distracted by that
Yeah.
cell phone. teachers don't have time, right? If I've got the cell phone in hand, that notification is coming. I'm going to get a Snapchat from my friend across the way, right? I'm going to get a video or some Instagram post or something. And so it's this constant battle because, Jared, I agree with you. You're exactly right. I think most people agree with you. We're saying no cell phones, yet we're trying to still get computers in their hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so
let me introduce some more arguments into that. One, it's here. We're the only way we're going back is, EMP goes off and we all of a sudden have to learn Stone Age technology. Seriously. Also, this isn't the first time we've had arguments like this as humanity as a whole. When writing came about, there was arguments that we're going to lose our memory because we're writing it down. So we won't carry that. And so I still think, yes, children are going to lose 20 minutes of their time getting back on track.
20 minutes they don't have.
Teachers need to learn how to instruct through that. Also, why can't the teacher become that notification during class, mass to the students? The teacher can be like, Billy, I sent you a text with this part of Romeo and Juliet that you're going to read now. Well,
What if Billy can't afford a cell phone? His family doesn't
and then
have
if
it.
Billy doesn't have a cell phone to use, they're issuing the computers. I don't know. But to try to say we're going to take a step back, that is a fight that I believe education will lose.
I want to also,
and I don't think they'll lose it through legislation. I don't think they'll lose it because it is almost an unachievable goal.
Okay, but here's my thing. Gum is everywhere. I knew I could not chew gum in class. So I had to keep it in my bag. And if I was caught chewing it, I had to throw it in the trash and we had to redirect and teachers pushed that. Teachers should be able to say, because under a cell phone, you don't know what access this child has. You could have pornography going on in a classroom. You've got children that can't afford cell phones who would be left out. We've already got the school issuing computers that are on a very specific guardianship so that they can't access certain websites and all of that. We've integrated the technology. Aside from an emergency, I don't see why you need to have cell phones in school. That's the only barrier I have, is that our kids are not fully protected in public school or any school for that matter. Anything could happen at any time. They should be able to have access to a parent via text or call if it's an emergency. But I think that even us, our attention span is this big now. And that's kids too. To be a teacher with all these different cell phones or people without them, I think that puts a whole new spin on inequality in a classroom.
I'm not disagreeing with you guys. I'm not at all. But as a student of history, this is one that you will lose because it's been lost in every other technology. We're seeing
the same thing, quite frankly, with AI, right? It came out. We were terrified. We had colleges saying, hey, you use this, you're gonna get expelled from the university level. At the same time, I'm going, because I try to keep up on my craft, and they're saying, if you don't know how to use AI in the workforce, you're obsolete.
Yeah.
Don't even try. So now we're trying to say, okay, how do we use this? How do we teach students to use tools correctly? And this, when you talk about cell phones, let's take away school. There's studies all over the place. I'm sure, and I don't want to promote a book here, but The Anxious Generation, read by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. I don't know the exact numbers, and it's showing the damage that has been done. I don't think the cell phone is the issue. It's the
not solely.
It's the brain development. When you put something this powerful in the hands of somebody who doesn't know how to wield it, it becomes dangerous.
Well, humanity's learning a new tool, but also the average parent of this anxious generation who fought for everyone's a winner, everyone gets a trophy.
Yeah.
If little Timmy gets a bad grade, the teacher's in trouble. That's also a part of that equation. You cannot forget that. You can't forget also it's a generation that's had the highest level of divorce, no fathers in the home, no strong male example. We've had a government that has been neurotic and schizophrenic over the last 20 years. We've had nothing but a news media where every night as they walk through the house, the trusted adult in the room is watching a show that's showing them nightmare and terror and trying to get ratings through that. Instead of telling you the news, they're trying to be a drama. So there is a lot that goes into that.
That's a lot.
You go, I mean, read Jonathan Haidt and Lukianov, their show, what is it, Coddling of the American Mind, or their book, Coddling of the American Mind. It lays it all out. The cell phone is a big part of that equation, but
There's more. Absolutely. And somebody asked me the other day, when was the last time you seen a kid with a cast? And I thought, man, the point being, we don't get out anymore.
mm-hmm.
Kids used to break things. That's how we grew. That's how we learn.
Yeah.
I learned, by bad experience that you can't jump a bike over 2x4s. It doesn't work very well.
How often have you seen a group of kids on a bike?
Right. You
Yeah.
don't see that very often. Right. So, we have good parents. I'm sure we have great people who are listening right now saying, yeah, I've seen it. And this is, I make my kids go outside. That's what I have to do. Hey, I took all my kids to Home Depot yesterday. For what reason? I had to return some stuff, and I made them come with me because I say, it's time to get out. I said, you got plans? No, your plans aren't in front of my TV. Let's go. And
the populace, I mean, we've gotten younger and younger and younger, and I'm guilty of throwing an iPad in front of my child at a young age. And I've probably helped create a little ADD in both of them on their focus, because that development and that gray matter, and as they're developing, their attention span, and I know because adults are having it too, it's one high to the next high to the next high by design. These are designed to do this, and we're growing little addicts. I mean, they're looking for that next thing. That's how we all get stuck in the void. I call it the abyss, when I'm like, hey, put down the iPad, because you've been in the abyss where it's one reel to the next reel to the next reel. Yeah. And all of a sudden 4 hours has gone by.
Well, we're building the next humanity. The change is here. Just like every other technology's invented, a new human has to mold around it. And yes, that first group of humans is a lost group.
I would like to know, Matt, with that thought, and you're absolutely right. If there is a ban on, my whole thing about cell phones, like I said, is safety. Is there anything going on? And this is what I love about the work you do, because I know many legislators who know who you are, who have gotten your guidance or thoughts on bills. I know you have to work with other people in order to have a successful school board. That does take a unity with, with you, legislature, the board itself, and then with these districts. Going into session, I know a lot of them will seek counsel from the school board and vice versa. So how is the security? Is anybody addressing security in our schools? And has that been something the school board has talked about?
Absolutely. School safety has been on the minds of everybody for years. Especially these past couple of years, legislature has put a lot of money into school safety. But can I be honest with you guys? I feel like I can, and your listeners here. Everything that we're trained on, everything that we talk about, I shouldn't say everything, a lot of the stuff, most things is reactionary.
Absolutely.
You know what the safest thing is having kids comfortable enough to come to your administrator or your teacher and say, I think something's wrong with so-and-so, or so-and-so told me that they have plans, right? Because a lot of times that doesn't come out till after the fact. They're putting in this, I can't remember the name of the bill, but they want the school guardian. Well, what's a school guardian? All it is it's somebody who's willing to shoot somebody who starts shooting first, right? I mean, that sounds brutal, but they can't prevent. The school guardian is not going to prevent. It might help the shooter question, like, oh man, I'm probably not going to go there. That's helpful.
Yeah.
But, we're going to train them on how to take a life if necessary. And that stuff needs to happen. And we talk about putting different security measures in the schools, and we do different drills and things of that nature. And like I said, we put more and more money into the keeping the people out. But the safest thing that we can do is to talk to our children, make sure that they're mentally safe and don't have those plans, right? And then talk to our children and say, if you hear of this, you've got to, at the very least, let me know as a
Yeah.
parent, right?
Mhm.
See something, say something.
Well, we've got to fix our society.
Yeah, this isn't one of those situations where it's a secret, right? And I had, I went to watch admittedly, it was a social emotional learning. I said, what is all this about? I need to see what's going on. This was when SEL was making a big push, and there was these organizations going to different schools. And I said, I got to see what's going on, because I don't do that at my school. We do our own stuff and we take care of it. We teach these principles like, hey, be responsible for yourself and your friends. Help them by saying something, right? Doesn't help anybody to keep it a secret. And one of the things that they said that I walked away with that I actually thought was very valuable, they were talking to first graders, so it was very age appropriate. They say there's two types of secrets that make you happy and secrets that make you nervous. And you can keep the ones that make you happy, like it's so-and-so's birthday party, we're going to keep that a secret. But the ones that make you nervous, you need to tell somebody. And
that is a good one.
Yeah.
That is.
That's what we need to help our kids understand. Like if a friend of yours tells you, hey, don't tell anybody, but I got to see, and you got to carry that pit with you. You got to talk to somebody. You got to get help.
Yeah, and that goes deeper than just if that kid has some plans, but what if that kid's going through some stuff,
Right.
Yeah, and so bring a responsible person involved who can actually aid the situation. We have 5 minutes left. I want to run through some comments.
Quickly,
we only have 5 minutes. I got to run through these comments. Got to pour it in on both sides.
You got to hold on. The school guardian doesn't have that interaction with the child day to day like a teacher does. And I think that is the number one thing. The child has to know the teacher is a safe place. The administration is a safe place. And you've had this experience in the school recently. And that conduit between administration and parent is paramount, because as a parent, I feel like my child's in a safe space. And because there is so much information that you personally send out to parents, and you reiterate that same fact. If your child sees something, say something. And again, it's you're living by example. So I appreciate that. And I know I feel secure where my daughter's concerned. Now run through comments.
All right. On YouTube, Jordan says, yeah, college is important. I had great professors at Utah Valley University. Developing the skills you learn matters the most. One of the high school wrestling coaches I know said he would not let his daughter have a cell phone. He is an awesome wrestling coach. Look, I agree, but just my thoughts on it are, if you want to do that, I support you on that.
I don't let my kids have
but there is a new human being born right now. We can't avoid it. Right now, go to get a job. You're not getting a job unless you have a cell phone. You're not getting hired anywhere.
Graders.
That's fine. But
Sixth graders.
That is the new human being born. You don't want to be the horse archer when the rifle is invented. That's all I'm saying.
I get it. And I hear you, Jared. But look, you don't create a good soldier just by putting a gun in a 1-year-old's hand. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I agree. First, you got to teach him to spin it and do all the fancy stuff. But the new technology is here. It is here.
And it's not
can't,
right.
We can't avoid it. And then we got some Facebook comments.
Okay.
All right. Jeff Adamson says,
hi, Jeff.
Love that you use the word mental.
He says before that, how big of a bureaucracy would need to be created to follow students with the money? This is really interesting to me as well, because we need to know statistics and where exactly. I mean, have we figured out where and how to best spend the money, rather than it just going right to administration like it sometimes does? How do we track it?
What
how
if
do
we
know
could
what's
tax
successful,
in parents and parents paid for school?
That would be interesting. I think the closest thing they got was they talked about Amendment A. It's no longer on the ballot, or maybe it's on the ballot, but it won't matter.
Yeah.
It was too late to take it off. But anyway, but they said the legislators said we want to get rid of property, or of putting all of your property taxes to education. We want to do different ways, right? I don't know. Those are great questions, because I don't know, quite frankly, how much of my money goes to my kids. And because I have a household of 5 kids, 2 of them are still students, how much money still goes to them, right? Am I paying less per student because I have more than you, who might have 1 or 2 kids at home, paying the same property taxes as I am?
Also, could it break the monopoly on education by the state? Could it make it so that education has to get leaner and more competitive?
It's true.
That's a lot to argue with. If the government took over cell phones in, say, 2004, we would still be using that Nokia thing, because that's as far as they would get. Right?
What are we talking about? I think how we're following the money.
Government controls schools, so they carry a monopoly on education. And that way, even a charter school, you have to compete in their monopoly against them. You have to be there competing against them and propping them up at the same time, when you should be able to say, hey, we're lean and mean. You want your kid to do this? You come here and learn this.
Right.
And people would choose you, and they wouldn't have to, you would pull competition into the education market. All right.
Our charter school, I sought out. I researched all the schools, including private, and I chose Excelsior based on what I learned. And so it's worth the drive to me to get them there. And it's also worth the requirement and volunteer hours and things to have them participate.
Yep. And Matt Jones, what's up, Matthew? He says, why every school hasn't been fortified is beyond me. There are ways to do so without making it look like a prison, if they truly want to maximize safety.
I'm with you.
That's a good point. I would like to, again, competition where schools could play their own methods of doing it and how to figure it out. Let it rise. It shouldn't be a decision that's made in one place in Salt Lake City that covers the whole state, when every school has different needs, has different capabilities. But I still lean on, right now our society is sick. Yes, part of that is the cell phone has been invented. That has made us sick as a society.
We have a social 100%.
We're a new human being born. We're a new iteration, just like writing and agriculture. Everything has changed humanity, and it causes a lot of chaos in the beginning.
Who's that comment from?
Matt Jones.
Matt, let me speak to Matt for a second. Is that okay?
Yes.
I appreciate what Matt's bringing up here. And I do want to say there are actual laws against sharing what your school is doing to fortify, right? Because you don't want to let the bad guys know, if you will, what
you're doing or not doing.
What you're doing, right? I will tell you.
Yeah, don't tell us about the shaped Channerite charges you have at the doorway, covering 45 degrees from both directions.
But I mean, obviously, you're going to see some obvious things. Like a lot of times, people put locks on the doors or buzzers. A lot of schools have buzzers. You'll see those obvious things. They can't tell you everything, and they can't show you everything. But I do want to, because I'm glad you brought this up, because the legislature has put a ton of money out there to help schools fortify and get there. So whether they are or not, I don't know for sure, but I know that laws have been saying, hey, beef up your security, take care of your buildings, right? I know that a lot of times money is a huge factor. None of this is cheap, and nobody's making it free, of course. And so, but I do want Matt to understand. I should have remembered his name. It's a fantastic name.
Kind of biblical, really.
It's interesting too, because we talked about arming teachers and the actual Tim Jimenez bill when he talked about getting teachers training, proper training. I mean, this is the age we're living in. Do we want to have our teachers armed? No. In a perfect world, there should be no need. But if it's a deterrent for any would-be person, that it means ill will to walk into a place and they don't know if the secretary is going to end it, or if, right down the hall, you've got 4 teachers who are going to end it. We never want that. But what we do want as a society is to know that schools are safe and that there are people in them that are prepared to protect with their lives the children that they are taking, that are in their care. So I think that's.
And now everybody knows that in Utah, there is at least one person in there who is willing to do that in every Utah school.
Hey, and in the great state of Utah, there may be a concealed carry parent visiting the office. So for all you Dick Dastardly out there, remember, you may get your butt handed to you by, Bob the plumber who's down there to turn over a doctor's note. Anyways, everyone, we got to cut.
Mention his website real fast.
I've got it up on the screen. We got to cut Matt loose. We got Carrie coming in, but everyone go to Vote Hymas. That's HYMAS.com. VoteHymas.com. Check him out. You guys should be getting your ballots.
They're out. So
Matt's a friend of the show, friend of the county. He is an educator's playing a part in my niece and nephew's lives, and also playing a part in Holly's kids' lives. Matt, thank you very much for coming on, and good luck. We'll, either way, let's have you back on after this is all over, and do a little chat at least about the state of education in Tooele and Humana.
We appreciate you, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate your work.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Yeah, we'll see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.